Hello, Soul viewers. Big Ronnie here with another Soul Stay-at-Home Series episode. Today is May 20th, 2020. We are in our 6th week of lockdown recordings, trying to show you that some of your favorite artists are still out there doing what they're doing, creating, working, trying to make the best of this situation. Through desperate times comes the best art, they say. I cannot wait to talk about that with today's artist, Alice Mizrachi. How are you today, Alice?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have a conversation with you.
Same. Now, yours was one of the first pieces I think that Erica took my picture in front of with Big Ronnie and Street Art a bunch of years back. And I loved that it was two things. It was it was readable. You didn't need any definition or ledger to understand what was going on. And two, it made you connect because the woman kind of looks like every woman.
Cool. What piece was that?
Erica, it was Long Island City. The building, big square building, was covered all sides. I think it was on Boulevard.
Was it for Welling Court or was it CERN's project?
CERN's project. That's the one it was.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. That's so awesome. Yeah, that project was really amazing. I do tend to make the women that I portray on my walls be universal in some aspect. My aim is to not only highlight women in kind of a positive aspect, but also to make that woman feel like every other woman that might be looking at the wall. A lot of times the female character is either a depiction of a goddess or a sacred feminine archetype, oftentimes also an alter ego of self or mother or sister or friend, or even someone in my community that I may love or want to honor. So that's interesting that you noted that. Thank you.
Well, I think I think it was clear that it was cultural but not ethnic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Because I'm a first generation woman that was born in this country to migrant parents from Tel Aviv. They experienced great struggle getting here, and even when they were in Tel Aviv, they were there during time of war and a lot of challenges that they had to go through. And when they decided to come here, they came with my sister, who was a little baby. And so, kind of duality between my work and it often comes out where there are these really traditional aspects of culture, tradition, and religion. Also these very modern ideals or modern.
We're losing Alice. We'll see if she comes back. This is the fun part of producing any type of show these days over the internet. You have to deal with people's internet connections, and I saw Alice was in her studio. We'll give her a minute to connect before we... Oh, there she is.
Can you hear me? Maybe I need to move. Usually it's okay, but...
Yep,
So
you're back now. I filled the air a little bit. You were talking about the religion, culture, and tradition.
Yeah, so I was saying that my brother was a hip hop kid. He grew up he in the middle of the 80s, and he was very much influenced by the music. And because I was his little sister, I was always kind of tagging along. That had a great impact on me as a young girl, watching my brother and his friends spin on the cardboard and break dance, and then him throwing parties while he's, spinning records on his Techniques 5000, or I think it's 5000, yeah. And so I think that became part of my identity as like a young, American New Yorker, whereas some of the more traditional aspects of myself come from the Middle East, from my parents' values and roles.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense because the street culture, hip hop culture was always speaking out against what we were hearing at home that wasn't the truth, that we had to learn the truth on our own and we were the truth and things like that. So that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. In a way it was, there was I feel like I've always been attracted to revolution, and things that are kind of against the mainstream or involved in a kind of subculture. And for me, that was when I was growing up and I was watching that, I was like, wow, this is so interesting. This is so cool. Like, these kids are out here, doing weird things. And it was so interesting to me. And, part of it was also my love for graffiti culture and watching my brother spin on cardboard that was all tagged up, and not knowing really what the significance of that was. But then as I got older, I began to understand that it was, it was quite significant that kids wanted their identity to be seen and heard and understood, especially in communities like the Bronx, where, the Bronx was burning and a lot of kids were suffering. I didn't grow up in that kind of environment. I grew up in a very stable, and very kind of wealthy community. Queens, in some parts of Queens, it's really beautiful. So I happened to watch it from the sidelines and understand that there was a great emergence of a beautiful subculture, and a revolution kind of emerging.
How old were you when you first picked up a spray can?
Let's see, I was about 12, but it wasn't anything serious. It was like me catching little tags on, like around the neighborhood where I grew up. And CERN knows about the Go Path in our neighborhood in Douglaston, because we grew up in the same neighborhood. But I never thought that was going to become my lifestyle or my career. I was more like trying to just be badass, like, oh, I want to do something that, but I never thought it would turn into my career. I knew I wanted to be an artist at a young age, but I didn't know that was the way that I would kind of fall into it.
What was your first tag?
Tag? It was it was Allard, ALARD. Metallica, Lard. I was really into Metallica back then, and so I kind of picked that up. It was with my friend Gabby, and so we went out and we caught tags, and we were so silly and young, and but that was really that was the beginning of something that now I look back and I'm like, wow, I was even interested in my teens, like I loved that.
See, what I love about my job as a podcast host here and my ability to interview people is that every artist I interview is different.
Yeah.
And what I couldn't wait to talk to you about was, you're not just a graffiti head or an art school girl or someone who is, worked with the community. You've done it all in terms of getting your work out there and understanding how your work is perceived. If you could go back and change things, would you do anything different in those college years?
Well, thank you first for saying that, because a lot of times I'm so involved in the doing of it that I don't even realize that I'm doing as much as I'm doing. So thank you for noticing. And in terms of changing, I mean, college, I was really, really lucky that I had a wonderful art teacher in high school that led me to a great arts university. I didn't know how or I was going to do it. My parents weren't really into it. They were like, an artist, that's not really a profession. Where they came from, art was a privilege. It wasn't really a skill set or a way to make money. So, I really feel like I don't really have any regrets. I question sometimes how I was able to be so strong against against people that were like, you can't do this. This is not for you. This is very difficult. First of all, because you're a woman. Second of all, because, going to this Ivy League art school is super expensive. We don't know how you're going to pay for it. This isn't a career that you can have. All of these reasons why. And I was just like, nobody's going to tell me no. And I think in looking back, I'm really grateful to everyone that kind of tried to discourage me, because it just led to me being like, I'm going to show them that I'm going to do it. And when they see that I did it, they're going to be like, good job. And now I'm so lucky that I have had so much, ability and opportunity to do this work. And when I look back, I'm really thankful for the opportunity of going to a university that was at that caliber. So I don't really have any regrets. I don't think I would have done anything differently. I worked really hard. I was the kid that was like, I can't fuck up, because I will my parents won't allow me to fuck up and stay. And they helped a little bit, but I mostly paid I did it. Like, I worked 2 jobs. I paid for my tuition. I did whatever I had to do to make it and do it, So yeah.
What neighborhood is the studio in?
Oh, good question. So I was in the Bronx about 2 months ago, at Andrew Friedman home. But then I started to notice that I was shifting and changing, and that I really wanted to be around nature more. And so I started looking. I live in Rockland County in a small town called Nyack. And Nyack is really noted for artists like Edward Hopper and some of the great American artists that came out of New York School of Painters. I moved out here because my partner was here, and he was like, you gotta come, you gotta be with me out here. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I started to get, at first I was like kicking and screaming. I was like, I'm a city kid. I'm not leaving the city, fuck that. But then I started to notice that actually it was really good for me. But I still kept my studio in the Bronx because I was like, I don't want to leave the city. I wasn't comfortable. And in the past 6 months, I realized that it was becoming too inconvenient for me to commute to the city every day. It was 40 minutes commute, and there's nothing like, I love the Bronx, but it's a food desert. There's no really healthy food, and I'm very conscious of health and eating right and exercising and maintaining a balanced life. And it wasn't serving me. And so I started looking around my neighborhood where I live, and I found this lovely studio in Orangeburg. And so it's 6 minutes from my house. I'm on a farm. I see animals every day. There's nature, there's hiking trails, and it happened right before the pandemic. So I'm just so grateful, because I didn't want to be in the city during this pandemic. I kind of wanted to be away. So it's a great opportunity for me to be kind of focused, really, really sharp, laser sharp focus, no distractions from the city, and sort of like a residency, away from the urban craze.
A zoological residency. You're going to start painting the animals?
I am, actually. I've become a little bit connected to them by visiting them regularly, and I met the woman who is in charge of them, and I'm gonna sit outside, and paint them, and I'm so looking forward to that, because I've never really sat in front of animals and painted them, like, maybe my dog, but I've never been on a farm, so that's kind of cool.
See, I one of the things I love asking artists when we sit down with them is, what are you learning? Where's the work going? What's the next step? Have you working on any new skills? And now during the pandemic, it's like everybody's, got their thing that they're working on. What's yours?
So I'm always doing a lot of personal work, reading. I just finished reading the Superpower. It's like a supernatural book about superpowers and quantum physics. I'm really, really interested in kind of supernatural ideas, and really kind of elevating our vibrations at our highest potential, and creating my being to be at my highest potential. So I've been reading a lot. I've also, I'm usually, this is the time, the spring, I'm usually back to back with mural projects at this time. Like it usually starts from April to like, I don't know, September, October, November, and so those months are usually outdoor projects. This is the first time in like 10 years that I've actually been inside the studio making work during the spring. And it feels so wonderful. Like it really allows me to like go back into my practice and understand what I've done and where I'm at now. So I would say I'm really kind of relearning my narrative and relearning who I am in the process of my career and my work. What else have I been? Oh, I've been doing gardening. I do that every year, but that's not really learning anything new, but it's nice to get back into it when I'm not, again, running from job to job.
And how are you handling the financial downturn? Obviously, not being outside and working on larger projects, some of those are for the community and sponsored and things like that, but some of those put money in your pocket too.
Yeah, definitely. The first month was challenging because all of my projects were put on hold or either canceled. But the thing about being a freelance artist is that we hustle. We make it work from moment to moment. We don't really know what's going on, and a lot of people feel like that's sort of unstable. I'm used to it already, not knowing what's not going to happen. I kind of embrace that flow and fluidity of the lifestyle. Um, but everything was put on hold. So for a moment, I was like, oh my God, like all of my funds have been kind of frozen for a minute. But I just went to the studio. I created series of little watercolors, put them online, sold them for $100 each. The wonderful thing about a social media community and my community at large is that we all support one another no matter what. And so if I'm releasing a series of 10 watercolor paintings for $100 a pop, my community most likely is going to support me. And I'm super grateful for that. So, I just find creative ways to be able to, engage and do what I do. It did take a moment though, because I was like, oh my God, this is like really unfamiliar territory. But again, I just go in the studio and, channel, meditate, channel my, my centeredness and figure it out.
What's one skill in the studio that you wish you could snap your fingers and have?
Oh my God. I oftentimes have it in my mind, and getting it out it's like I have a million ideas, but getting it out takes time. So the skill that I wish I could snap my finger at is just like, okay, from vision to creation, like right away, instantly, without all of the work it takes to get there, like the materials, the actual making of it, the process of it. Like I just want to be able to like visualize and it just like comes.
You're like a stencil cutter, but want someone to cut their stencils for them.
Exactly, just produce it right away.
Have you ever tried different means of your work, things like that, alternative applications like digital or stencil or?
I've done lots of stencils in my early career as a mural artist. I did a lot of stencil work. I really love pattern work, and so oftentimes in my paintings, like for example, this painting, which is in progress, like you'll see patterns in the background, that are very reminiscent of sort of Islamic, Judaic, Sephardic patterns. Yeah, and so, that I would say is, one sort of application. I've also done a lot of digital work. I mean, by trade, I'm an illustrator. That's what I studied. So I know Photoshop, I know Illustrator. Whenever I have to do a mock-up for a wall or anything, it's, I use those to be able to facilitate the jobs that I get. Recently, I've been doing some photo montages on the computer, which has been really fun. And it's kind of like a new way for me to stretch myself, but I'm just playing right now with it, so we'll see where it goes.
How is a montage different from a collage?
For me, it's very similar, except for a collage, I have to use glue because it's actual physical. But a photo montage, I'm using digital, like I'm using Photoshop or Illustrator. Or I like using Photoshop because I know it better, but layering digitally is way different than doing it by hand for me anyway. It's like, you know, computer is clean and dry, and, you know, collage is like wet and you have to, you know, make space for it.
What do you listen to while you work?
Oh, so recently I've been listening to a lot of roots reggae, like Althea and Donna, and yeah, and so, you know, sometimes I really love like listening to the Velvet Underground, and, you know, and of course hip hop is my go-to usually, but I like to switch it up.
What kind of hip hop? You like gangster? You like neo soul? What do you like?
I like Gangstar. I like Gangstar, the group. I love neo soul. You know, recently I watched the Erykah Badu and Jill Scott thing that was online, which was really motivating for me. I love both of them. They're both women and they're both super powerful, kind of very positive women. And so for me, I tend to gravitate towards that. Like, for example, right here, this is a portrait of Asada Shakur, and this is like a collage painting. So oftentimes in my work, you'll see that I'll depict women who inspire me or who I feel somewhat a kinship with.
That's great. Now we watched the Erica Jill Scott battle, and we loved every second of it. And, you know, I'll be honest with you, I didn't stop for 1 second to say, "Wow, these are two women."
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's good or bad. Maybe I should have.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in hip hop, right, or even in graffiti culture, even in the art world at large, um, you know, I'm not complaining. I'm very blessed. I love my role as an artist. Um, but the space for us to move in and the amount of women in it's harder for us to get in. It's harder for us to be accepted. And when we finally are, we really get a lot of props. And so I always like to support women in any aspect, because I feel like I'm supporting women supporting women. I feel like I'm supporting um, my, you know, my gender, like other women who I know who've worked just as hard to be able to get where they needed to get.
Well, let's talk about some of them, because I know you have a couple of you believe it or not have some upcoming shows and projects to plug.
Yeah, so Rob from Outlaw Arts and Mark 212 Arts, they put together a show called Denim Paper, and, you know, I really love it when curators and gallerists come together, especially during times like this, to highlight some of us. And so the work is a denim jacket that I painted, and he wanted some paper pieces, so I did a series about infinite love. And for me, like, I'm always trying to think of, you know, being as kind, as positive, as infinitely loving as possible. No matter what someone gives me, just try to, you know, give it back infinite love. So I wanted to do a piece on that. I used the infinity symbol in all of the paintings and the jacket to highlight the concept of the series.
Well, that's great. I hope the show does well, and I saw the roster. You got some big names go alongside you.
Yeah, great. You know, it's great to be amongst my friends and, you know, some new friends as well. You know, I was like working within my team of people, and it makes me feel really good.
Well, Alice, that was a really fast 20 minutes, and I'm shocked. That disappeared pretty quickly. I want to thank you for your time. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your work schedule and showing us some of the work. But before we let you go, I see you're pretty mobile, moving around the studio. You want to show us a few more pieces?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Let's see if I can flip this. I don't think you can flip it, but that's okay. I'll show you. So I'll show you this paint. This is a larger piece I'm still working on. Again, it's a piece about motherhood, relationship, birthing, sacred feminine archetype, or the woman who kind of creates, right? Thinking about Mother Earth a lot these days, because I feel like during this pandemic, one amazing positive thing we've gotten out of this is that we now can hear the birds all of a sudden in New York. Like I was in the city the other day and the birds were chirping and I was like, yes, the pollution has stopped or has slowed down. And so a lot of things, you know, it might give us a little perspective on how we need to be treating our environment. And so oftentimes I'll talk about, you know, nature and creation. These pieces right here are some of the paintings that I've been selling online that I mentioned on my, I don't know if you guys can see them, on my Instagram. And so they're really quick watercolor drawings, and I've been having a lot of fun with them. You know, there's like a series here of, you know, I just make a bunch of them. And actually I'm releasing a beer glass on Memorial Day, and 20 of those drawings will be available for sale. And then this, I've been doing a lot of collages lately. This is called I inherited my grandmother's gaze. It's a portrait of me and my grandmother. And I don't know, I'm just really enjoying kind of stepping in. I also have been doing some collaborations with my partner, who's also an artist, a graffiti writer and an artist. He does like these beautiful textured backgrounds, and I went in on top. I have a ballerina series I just completed as well. And then, you know, I'll show you this. This will be the last kind of, look at that light that comes in through my, isn't that gorgeous? So these right here are some works on paper, these one line. I'm really, really interested in line drawing and the subconscious kind of taking over as we draw. It's called automatism. And so I've been doing those, and those have led to some of these. So yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Well, that was great. Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
For sure.
Alice, before we let you go, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you on Instagram and on the web?
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Ronnie. I really appreciate it. I'm grateful for the opportunity. You can check me out on Instagram, which is am_NYC, or you can visit my website at alicemizrachi.com.
Thank you very much, and we will see you when we see you again. Until then, keep working.
Perfect, Ronnie. Thanks so much for your time.